even when you look at the owners or the executive and you look back at their own professional career journey, what you find out, and they're no different than the general population, what you find out is that
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.
All righty, welcome back to another episode of the Business After Hours podcast. Here with my co-host Jared and our guest Steve. How are you gentlemen doing this morning, afternoonish?
Doing wonderful. Glad to be here.
Same.
I had a busy week, so it's been nice to slow down a little bit. My kids show cattle, and so we've been running around last week doing that. So it's nice to be home.
Did you say showing cattle?
Yeah. So my kids do the junior steers here in Texas. So
okay.
we the San Antonio rodeo is pretty big, and so they did the rodeo on Monday and Tuesday. So
nice,
fun times.
Yeah.
And
you don't get much of that out here in Southern California, unfortunately.
No, it's sad. It's a good thing for the kids. It's fun to watch them, develop with the animal, and then
Right.
present it. They do a great job, and I think it teaches them life lessons for sure.
Closest thing we have out here is our annual 4-H, and it's all about goats and chickens and rabbits, and that's pretty much
Yeah. They do that here. It's we have 4-H as well, but we also have FFA for the high schoolers. So the high schoolers do Future Farmers of America, and so, but they add cattle as well as between steers and heifers. They do all that here.
So how's the how were things down in Southern California for you, Steve?
The great thing about living here is that the weather very rarely deviates. I mean, we have our windstorms and other things that, make the national news, but for the most part, it's anywhere from the low 70s to maybe the low 90s, and it's kind of hard to walk away from that until you start seeing things like wildfires. And, of course, we had a really bad one here a couple of weeks ago, and that changes everything. I mean, I feel for those people up there because it'll be years before they ever get back, if they do. But other than that, things are good.
How close were they to you?
What?
How close were they to you?
Oh, Orange County is halfway between LA and San Diego, and this was north of LA, so they were like 50 plus miles. And sometimes we will get the after effects, like ash, from the fire that kind of drifts. This time we didn't. So it obviously the wind took it in another direction. But I mean, we were glued to the TV like everybody else, kind of watching everything play out.
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking because they lose everything. Things that you can't ever get back.
And there's a whole stretch of Malibu right on the coast. I mean, it is 50, 60 feet from the ocean, and that entire strip was just leveled. I mean, it's gone.
Crazy,
man.
So it's sad for people that go in and out of there, and now all of a sudden you're driving through it and you're like, oh my God, I don't recognize this anymore because nothing's here.
Yeah, and it's going to be even more irrecognizable.
Yeah. Right.
So Steve, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, your career background, and where you're at now?
Okay, my entire former 30 years in business was spent in the consumer products manufacturing field, which is a monster field. I mean, everything you buy in a grocery store or big box store comes from a company in that field, and worked for some really great name brand organizations like General Mills and Lysol Chemical. I mean, these folks were just at the peak of their game in terms of marketing and distribution and things of that nature. And 2008, I'd kind of run my course with it,
Sure.
And what I was really looking for was, because I always had this dream ever since I was like 14 years old. I said, at one point, I want to have my own business. I just didn't know what it was going to be or when it was going to show up. In 2008, I figured it out and it showed up. And so I signed on with a very, very small startup coaching company down in the San Diego area. Very small. I mean, they had just gone from starting up themselves to moving into a franchise model.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
but I kind of fell in love with their whole philosophy about how to do this and how to market it and things like. And so I joined on, and it was a wild ride, like most anybody else that gets into a startup. And 2.5 years into it, just about when I was really doing good, the company went bankrupt.
Oh no.
which is not, it happens a lot to small companies that go into franchise models. You have to pretty much have about 11 years behind you in order to kind of get over that hump of risk.
Sure.
Guys weren't around that long, so they went out, and so I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? Because the franchise I bought is basically worthless, right?
Sure.
So I worked with some people inside, and I basically refashioned what I had purchased, and I built my own version of what I thought it should look like based on my background, what I was skilled at. And I went from coaching entrepreneurs and startups to coaching, established small businesses and larger companies with executive teams. So I brought in an entire executive coaching program that was not part of the original franchise, and just kind of honed it. And there were some things, I mean, quite honestly, I learned more about what they did that didn't work. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to scrap that and refashion the thing, give it a new name. And I will tell you, I lost a lot of money, but it was the best thing that could ever happen to me. There's no way I'd be doing what I'm doing today if I hadn't gone through that.
Sure. What lessons did you learn through that?
One of the lessons that I learned was you have to understand who your client is, and you have to stay true in terms of messaging, in terms of service, providing. You have to stay true to that. And one of the things this company did, and I understand why they did it, they started running into financial troubles. So they started leaking off that path. And basically anybody that could sign the contract and write a check was a client. Big mistake. Wow. They had, at one point, they had 4,800 clients worldwide. And one of the things that actually helped me was I raised my hand when they went out to the franchise pool and they said, we have clients in other continents, in Africa, Australia, Europe, Canada, Mexico. Do you guys want to handle them? Because we don't have enough internal staff to take care of it. Most of the other people said, no, we don't want to be bothered, because time zones were a big problem. Sure. And I said, you know what? I got plenty of space. I have no reason to say no to this. So I got into the other clients in other continents. And at one point I had 43 of them, which is probably tipping it a little bit, but it was amazing how well that lasted, because these folks all recognize that the United States is one of the best countries on the planet for sales and marketing. Nobody else does it better than us. So if they're going to learn how to do it, they come here to do it. Sure. So that was a great little piece of it. But the big thing I learned was you can't walk away from who you understand your client to be, because when you start getting into anybody that can show up, you run into problems you just can't get out from under.
Sure.
Now, did you niche into a certain industry when you're looking at coaching people?
You mean before I joined on?
Or even after, like now, are you niching to certain industries?
Yeah, I've always stayed true to the business professional environment. So, there's a lot of variations of coaching out there. I don't do life coaching, even though life, kind of leaks into business, but I don't focus on that. I don't do relationship coaching. I don't do any of these other kind of what I call soft coaching, types of work. All of my coaching is designed to take a business professional, whether it's an owner of a small company or somebody at the V level or the C level in a larger corporation, and help them figure out how to tune themselves up so they can show up and interact at a top level, the kind of level where people almost feel them before they walk in the room. Right. They have the ability to influence, they have the ability to impact. They don't have to operate with just the stripes on their sleeves all the time. People just know what they're all about and they follow them willingly. And so that's my focus with, and of course, a lot of other stuff gets in the way, like, is your business model really the right thing for you? I've got a guy now that just called yesterday, and I'm going to be working with him. And he's got a business he's been running for 8 months. He's got 13 employees. He's in a great industry, but he realizes now that the model he put together is not scalable. He's buried in all kinds of problems and minutia that he can't get out from under. And he's like, he's raised his hand. He says, man, I need help because this is a gold mine business and I'm effing it up myself.
Right. Who's the ideal candidate for you to coach?
For me, it's somebody in either a commercial service, what I call a B2B style business, or in a professional sector, a law firm, a CPA firm, an engineering company. So, those are what I call my high academic clients. They've gone to school for a long time. They've got certifications to practice what they do, but along the way, nobody ever taught them how to run a business.
Right.
So they're great clients. And then on the top end, I do a lot of industrial work, logistics companies, specialty manufacturers. I'm not working with GM or any of those kind of folks.
Right.
It's people that, they make furniture. They do stuff like that. So those, I like businesses that have a certain gritty component.
Okay.
Because in my background, consumer products, you start getting into the logistics and the manufacturing side of it. It's gritty business.
Sure.
But there's a lot of things you can work on. There's a lot of small things you can do that will have a big impact in terms of how the business performs.
So, who I try to rephrase this question. It was right in my head and then it lost. But who should reach out to you? At what phase in their business should they reach out to you?
To me, the folks that I do my best work with are ones that at some point they start to realize, and I'll tell you a short story. I get an appreciable amount of clients who they're not the ones that contact me. Their spouse contacts me. Their personal assistant contacts me. Their business partner contacts me. And the common denominator in all three of those is those people have been hearing the same stories over and over about stuff they don't like anymore about the business, problems they can't solve, issues they're having to live with because they don't know what to do with them. And those secondary people are saying, you know what, you got to do something. You've been griping about this for a year now, and you can't fix it. You need help. You need somebody from the outside. So those people will actually call me on behalf of the client and say, here's what I'm dealing with. Can you help him? And then they bring the client on, and then I talk with them. So a lot of times it's really people that have they've accepted mediocrity because they don't know what to do with it. And so just from a survival standpoint, they figure out how to do little end runs because they can't address the core problem. And the core problem usually is workflow process. From start to finish, are you doing things efficiently and consistently so the output is what the client wants and the customer expects? And if you've got little problems in there, you don't know what to do with them, it's going to break your system down. You're going to lose money. And the second biggest one, I've got people working for me and I don't know how to motivate them. I don't know how to direct them. They're not listening to me. I got all these other internal problems. In California, that's a landmine. We're just a very litigious state. And so you have to deal with that. So between workflow processes and people issues, that's the majority of what people call me about. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years and now I walk in the building and I don't know half these people anymore because they're as old as my kids. And they communicate differently and they think differently and they have different ideas about what it means to work in a small business.
Now, do you see any trends at a certain level that kind of catches them or holds them from going to that next level?
Yes. And I can tell you that in the mid-management field, that has it's almost gotten to a crisis level here in this country. And what I mean by that is people are being either brought in from the outside or promoted from within. And they're now in what I call that operational level, that real strategic level that separates the people at the top who are setting the direction and allocating resources and the people at the bottom that are actually building the widgets or providing the service. They're the conduit. And these people are stepping into these roles. They have no idea what they're doing. So they end up taking on the place of another team member, not the manager. So that is an issue that when an owner has somebody that's in that vital role and they're drowning, now the owner has got to be the owner and the manager. And so they forget what they should be doing at the top, which is looking out the front window, figuring out where the organization's going. Is it going in the right way? Are we running into roadblocks that I need to identify now? They stop doing that and they just get buried in the minutia of the business. And that's usually where the business starts to run into rough ground. And in some cases, it'll just kind of run in place. because nobody's got their hands on the wheel.
It kind of sounds like a catch-22 in a way, because how do you develop people to get to that point, as well as be able to work efficiently to operate in that level?
Well, most of it involves head work. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because I'm not a therapist. In fact, my contract says no therapy. If you need therapy, I will help you find somebody that does that. I don't do that. But a lot of it is head work. A lot of it is a change in perception about what you're there to do and what you need to let go of.
Sure.
And most of the people I find that get into that kind of catch-22 that you just referenced, they've lost the ability to separate themselves. So they stop delegating and they now do it themselves because they do it better than everybody else. So why give it to somebody else? They stop training people up and setting expectations that their folks can work towards. So they're constantly chained to the operation of the business. And it's all mental. Once you can get them to separate and think differently about what a business organization is supposed to be, and that they should theoretically be working themselves out of a job, then they're free to start working on the development and setting the expectations, and then stepping back and letting people do what they pay them to do. And you know what the one most common thing that I get feedback on? They do it and they start to realize that many of the people that they hired actually do these functions better than they were doing it.
Right.
And of course, then it's this age-old saying, "Gee, I should have done that 2 years ago." So when you hear that, what you realize is they've been basically treading water for 2 years before they finally figured out this is what business owners, this is what executives are supposed to do.
Right.
But it takes everybody a different length of time to get to that point. And if you're going to have a coach, my job is to help accelerate that path of awareness. Because the faster they get there and they recognize the benefit of it, they're taking over.
Right.
I get on sessions now and people say, "This is what I want to do today." Great. Tell me how I can help you move forward.
So are you finding that delegation and like an owner letting go of tasks, is that still fairly difficult?
There's 3 things that I deal with most frequently. It's delegation and holding people accountable when they fall off the path. Now, it's not like a whipping session, but it's being able to bring somebody aside and give them really good feedback as to what they should be doing to be better. So delegation, accountability, feedback, and all of that is encircled in, are you comfortable communicating? And a lot of people don't have very good communication styles, so that kind of gets in the way.
What's the reason for the lack of accountability?
Holding people accountable means getting comfortable with the potential of having a negative environment ensue. Not everybody likes feedback, especially if it's not good feedback.
Sure.
And as owners, the way to get around that is to really know the temperance of your employees, and then to be able to serve up the conversation. I'm not doing this to beat you up. I'm doing this because you actually are better than you're showing up. And I want to help you operate at the top of your game. So I have to tell you what I observe.
Right.
And it's all about observation. It's not about personal attacks. And when people start getting used to getting observation that helps them do their jobs better, then they become more willing to take the feedback and they start holding themselves accountable because they realize the intent is for their betterment.
Is it a little bit of a lack of fear, like losing the person if you give is that why some of the
well,
why they don't want to hold accountable?
There is a fear mentality, but the fear mentality is the person won't leave, that they'll stay and they'll become kind of a curmudgeon in the business and affect other people because they're talking smack, during break time or whenever. So that's what owners really fear is, I don't want to create a negative work environment by causing somebody to kind of go off the deep end and start poisoning everybody else.
Right. Legit fear. I mean, that I can see, especially in smaller businesses, because it just takes one bad mole and it can kill the entire momentum of the entire staff.
Well, even when you look at the owners or the executive and you look back at their own professional career journey, what you find out, and they're no different than the general population, what you find out is that the vast majority of feedback that they were given as they came up the ranks wasn't positive. There was no accolades for doing things well. There was only criticism for what they meant, what they didn't do well. And so if you grow up in an environment like that, and I got to tell you, my years were from, the beginning of the 80s, all the way up through today. Well, the 80s up into the middle 90s was pretty much like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the gurus were talking different stuff, but day to day in most businesses, when you got feedback, it wasn't good. And so people just associate negative messaging with giving feedback. And when you're in the position to provide feedback, you don't really know what else to do. You don't know how to serve it up. You don't know how to lay out the conversation so it's balanced. And so you either just do it and run the risk of what comes back, the blowback, or you just stop doing it.
Yeah. Now, what when you're coaching, what does that look like in a either day-to-day or weekly basis for coaching wise?
For my own business?
Correct.
All right. So I try to maintain throughout the year a kind of a margin of clients, either they're coaching clients for business or executive, or they're training clients. So they're more at the managerial level. They just need to learn how to do the job better. But I try to keep a balance of clients that I know is within my capacity range, because there's been 2 times in my 16 years where I went beyond that because the demand was so heavy and you don't say no to people showing up. And it bit me in the butt. You start forgetting things and, it's just not good. So I've learned to kind of stay where I need to be and attract the right clients. But every week is, I work with a calendar. I mean, I never used to do this early on, but in this business, my calendar is my boss. So everything I do, time blocking like a crazy person. Everything that I do throughout the day gets a spot on the calendar. Because if I just follow that, I know it's already pre-planned. I know what to expect. The client knows what to expect. There's almost no hiccups. So, but, at the same time, early on, a mentor of mine basically introduced me to this concept called lifestyle business. And a lot of people do it. You have a full-blown business that you've really notched down to something that runs very efficiently, and it doesn't get in the way of your life. And I decided that speaks to me because I've worked in mega-sized companies and had legions of people reporting to me, and I ran that route.
Right.
I was glad I did it then. I don't want to do it now.
Right. Right.
So I have just the right number of people with me that do things that I either am not capable of doing or don't want to do, and then I focus on what I do best.
So who do you turn away?
Okay. I turn away people that in the first 5 to 10 minutes of my complimentary consult, because everybody comes to me, I offer them 30 minutes. Let me find out what you really need to understand. Do you know what you need?
Sure.
And is it something I can actually help you with? So if I get the idea in about the first 5-8 minutes that what the person really wants is somebody to come into their business and do it for them, that's consulting. I don't do consulting. I do advisement because sometimes people are totally in dark territory. They have no idea what to do next. So you have to kind of give them some ideas to what they should be looking at. But I don't do any consulting. So if I find out somebody's really looking for that, and I've had in the last 16 years, I've had about 6 or 7 clients that, because I wasn't adept at seeing that early, I took them on and then very early realized what they were looking for. And then, we parted ways. I mean, there's a clause in my contract that you have a way to opt out. And I was glad to see them go. But if they want consulting, that's not a client of mine. If they have an idea that they think that all their problems can be solved if everybody around them changes, I don't take them. Because 90% of the problems that business owners run into and live with and can't figure out how to get beyond start with themselves.
Sure.
So if you're not willing to take a good look at how you think, how you behave, how you make decisions, how you show up, if you're not willing to go through that myriad of evaluation, then there's nothing I can do to help you, because it's always going to get back to, okay, why did you do this? This is, you did this, you got that. It's craziness to think you can keep doing that again and something's going to change on the other end. But there's lots of people out there that just will not go in that direction. I say, fine, there's other people you can work with. I'm just not the right person for you.
Fair enough.
Now, when you look at business models, there are certain businesses that I just stay away from. I don't work with restaurants. Restaurants have just about 100% failure rate. Sometimes it's preordained. Somebody changes the name, they sell it, somebody else changes it. But restaurants are just a target that I'm not good at. The other one is multi-level marketing organizations.
Yeah.
I've tried those early on, and I realized most of them don't adhere to business principles that are sustainable. So I don't deal with those either.
Point. Right.
But after that, if you've got a good, solid business model, and you're in a market where there's a need for what you do, you scrape away the name of the company, the location, and the size, and the guts are the same for just about everybody.
Okay.
That's good.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, you don't know anymore these days about, because everything moves so quick. Our society moves so quick. So, 1 minute's over here, the next minute's over here.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you keep up with those constant changes and still trying to keep that core gut of the business?
Well, for me, when I started this business up back in 2008, and then I went my own route in about 2011, 2012, I looked at my industry and I realized that the coaching industry was vast and fragmented. And in fact, I got a hold of a Dun & Bradstreet study on the industry. And, it was 10 or more years ago. But at that time, they had estimated that there was about 240,000 business professionals in the United States walking around with the word coach on their business card. So you got a lot of coaches, and they're broken into categories. You have big, giant companies that hire people to come in and coach on their behalf. And then you got mid-level kind of market-driven companies that might offer things like financial advisement and organizational strategy and coaching, so it's kind of a suite of things. But 80% of the industry is solopreneurs. And so I started looking at that and I thought, what am I going to do to raise myself above the fray? Because if I'm just one of the many, this is going to be a business that will never get off the ground.
Right.
And I ran into, in doing some online research, I ran into a guy that talked about this thing called authority-based marketing, where everything you do, whether you write articles, you do videos, you get on podcasts, you speak publicly, everything you do has to come from a core of what you're most authoritative about. Now, it doesn't mean you wear it on your sleeve. It just means everything that you focus on and talk about has an orientation that eventually people can look at and say, wow, I need somebody that knows how to do that. He's the best. And I spent 5-6 years going hard at that, and actually got to the point where people just, when they look at my website, they follow me on LinkedIn, or they watch some videos I have on YouTube, they instantly know that I understand what they're dealing with, and I have a method for helping them get out of it. And that's pretty much set me up. I've been close to capacity for about the last 6 years.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
What? When you say capacity, what does that look like?
On the top end, it's probably 30 clients. And on the bottom end, it can be, 18, 19. So I try to stay within that. And let's face it, people come in and come out. So throughout the year, you're going to have people that just finish up and they got what they came for. They're ready to fly the plane on their own. And I'm happy to let them go. I don't want to work with anybody for the rest of my natural life. That ceases to be coaching at some point,
Right.
Yeah.
So there is always a minimum amount of turnover, but it's just nice to know that you've got a platform and a message and a brand out there that people either recognize, or the minute they start diving into it, they say, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Awesome.
No.
Well, Steve, it's been nice having you on. I guess we'll conclude with why should somebody contact you?
If you want some really candid, unvarnished, but objective opinion about the condition of your business, why it's where it is, and what you need to do to move it past that and get back on the road that you want to be on, That's the reason you call me. And believe me, I'll tell people the entire roadmap in a 30, 45-minute phone session. They decide what to do with it. Some people sign up, some people don't. My whole goal in that first interaction is to make sure you've had the absolute best consultative phone call that you could ever have.
Awesome.
That's why people call.
That's good. That's good.
No, that's great.
If you're a spouse watching this for your significant other that happens to be a business owner, well, reach out to Steve here. Apparently it's or even an admin assistant or whatever. Reach out. We're going to also include all his links down at the bottom, of course. That way they can try to get all your links of you and make it easy for people to contact you. But definitely appreciate you coming on and enjoy your insight of business and why coaching is needed.
Hey, and look, this was a great platform. You guys did a great job with the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
No, I appreciate it.
Jared, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just thanks for coming on, Steve. We've had a few coaches on here, and I just feel like every time we have somebody like you on, we learn even more about it.
Right.
So I appreciate your insight.
Well, thanks for guiding the conversation, in a good direction. That was a big part of it. So thanks.
Well, and if any of you guys need Steve, again, we'll have all his links down below, so you guys can just click them and it'll bring up your web browser. And Steve, wish you nothing but the best of luck to you and your business, and hope you continue to succeed.
Yeah, thank you guys for being on here. You got a great podcast, and I will make sure that I get the word out as to where all this came from.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Until next time, we'll see y'all again.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.